News Center Maine is partnering with the Maine-Monitor to bring you some of the reporting being done by journalists at that nonprofit independent publication. We're going to be featuring one of their stories each Monday. And today we're talking about a part of Maine's legal system. Some prosecutors in our state say they are overwhelmed with cases, and now some of them are concerned that this could lead to mistakes being made. And there are other concerns, namely that those mistakes could have larger consequences in the future. Here now to talk about that story is Josh Keefe, who's a reporter with the Maine-Monitor. Thanks for coming in, Josh. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, so some of these prosecutors say that they are overwhelmed. Why?
Well, the first thing I understand, it's actually kind of interesting. There are fewer cases being brought in Maine now than there were 5-10 years ago. So it's not that there are more crimes being committed or more cases being filed. Actually, from 2010 to 2024, the number of cases filed in Maine went down about 40%. But what has changed, and this has a lot to do with the pandemic, is that the pending cases, there's like the backlog of cases that are open has gone up. So from 2019 to 2025, the number of felonies that are open went up 50%. And part of that is that prosecutors say that there's just much more stuff they have to do their job. And that's because there's so much more digital evidence than there used to be, right? Every case now involves body camera footage, involves cell phone footage, involves surveillance footage, involves text messages. You have to, use GPS to see where somebody was. Like there's just reams of digital evidence that did not exist a few years ago.
An enormous amount of evidence, a lot more that has to be gone through, a lot more I's that have to be dotted, T's that have to be crossed. What some of these prosecutors have told you is they're concerned that this will lead to more mistakes. What kind of mistakes?
Yeah, so being overwhelmed can sort of manifest itself in a bunch of different ways. But what we looked at in this story is something called discovery violations. And basically, discovery is it's part of the legal system, happens in every case, when the prosecution has to hand over all the evidence to the defense. Right? Here's the police reports, here's the footage. It's just part of having a fair trial. Discovery violations are when a judge rules that didn't happen, or that not all the evidence was handed over, or wasn't handed over quick enough. And in particular, we looked at a case out of Somerset County. So there's the district attorney's office up there covers Somerset County and Kennebec County. And in that case, it's a drug case, a very serious drug case. There's multiple aggravated trafficking charges. The judge ruled that there was a discovery violation because the prosecution didn't turn over evidence for a year since the case opened. A whole year went by. And the judge ruled that not only was there a discovery violation, but that the prosecution had operated in bad faith by not handing it over.
When the judge determines there has been a violation of these discovery rules, what are the consequences?
So here's the thing. There's what's called sanctions. And that sounds sort of like it's a punishment for the prosecution. It's really not. The idea is that the judge imposed sanctions to remedy the harm that's been done to the defendant. So in this case, the judge ruled that some evidence was just excluded from trial. And that's kind of an extreme sanction. It can go all the way up to just dismissing the entire case, right? But what happens more regularly is that when this happens, the judge says, you have to hand over the discovery, we'll give you a deadline, whatever, and then we'll move the case on. So, we'll set the whatever hearing's coming up, we'll move it further back so the defense has more of an opportunity to go over the evidence. The problem is that we're already overwhelmed with cases. So when you extend these cases out further, they don't move off the docket, they don't move, and that adds to the problem of having too many cases. So it's sort of, a negative feedback loop, right? Prosecutors get overwhelmed, they make mistakes, then cases get extended because of those mistakes, then they're more overwhelmed.
Obviously not a good situation.
Yeah.
What are people talking about as potential fixes for this problem?
Well, there's obviously just the legislature, right? Like there could be more funding, more resources for district attorneys' offices. But criminal defense attorneys are saying, listen, prosecutors, you have discretion to dismiss cases, to drop cases, or to make plea deals. I mean, the vast majority of criminal cases end in plea deals, right? So they have some sympathy for prosecutors being overwhelmed, but also say you can end these cases much more regularly than you are. And there's also the issue of these criminal defense attorneys want judges to impose more sanctions, to hold prosecutors accountable. Right now, and this is also a case out of Kennebec County, out of Meg Maloney's office, there was a oral argument in front of the Maine Supreme Court last month about a case out of her office. It was another drug case in which there was a discovery violation. In that case, there were 6 months went by without a court order happened. 6 months went by, evidence was not turned over. To be fair, District Attorney Maloney says that somebody was left off an email list as soon as they realized, they fixed it. But in that case, the attorney arguing wants basically the case to be sent down or dismissed. But what he's saying is that this is the case that the Maine Supreme Court, with his words, were draw the line on these slipshod discovery practices. That the Supreme Court should use this case to send a message to prosecutors to essentially clean up their act a little bit.
All right. We'll see where things go from here. Josh Keefe, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Rob.
And you can read the full story and much more at the-maine-monitor.org. That's all for now.